Okay, so today's review is a special request. And the anime I'm reviewing is basically about a bunch of adorable little creatures who like to beat the crap out of each other in hopes of being the best. And the main character is an adorable little creature who has a yellow color theme, and he shoots lightning. If at this point you are guessing that the show I'm talking about is Pokemon, you are absolutely wrong. I'm actually referring to Zatch Bell, or in Japan known as Konjiki no Gash Bell. Now, as I already mentioned, Zatch Bell is about a bunch of creatures who fight each other to be the best. And the main character, well, human character, is a boy named Kyo, who is kind of similar to Light in the sense that he's too smart for everyone else, but significantly different in the sense that he's not really quite as evil, per se. And, for the most part, this show tends to be rather comical in an almost One Piece sort of way, only with much more sexual innuendos in the Japanese version. And while as the fighting is pretty much Pokemon. But anyways, let's get over this review. Oh, by the way, in case you're wondering, it's Viz Media that dubs the show. Anyways, let's get started. Question 1. Is the opening left intact or dubbed in English? I really can't say they do. No, although I will admit that the openings they've given us are pretty decent. Not quite as good as the originals, but they change it at the same time as the Japanese version does, and, well, they're not the worst things ever. I mean, they give a similar feeling. But regardless, can't give them this one. 2. Is the background music left intact? Okay, let me explain something about Viz. You see, they have two ways of handling their dubs. If the dub is one of their big shows like Naruto, Bleach, Inuyasha, or Death Note, actually I think those are all of them that fall under that category, they tend to treat it with the utmost care, making sure all the background music is left intact, openings and endings are left alone, and all that stuff. However, there's also their side branch, where they take animes like Prince of Tennis, or Zatch Bell, or Mare, or Mar, whatever it is, as well as Blue Dragon, and they don't handle it quite as good. However, here's what they do for music. They take some of the music and leave it. On the other hand, other bits they replace. Now, granted, it's not exactly a horrible thing though, because I will admit that for the most part they time it properly so that when the Japanese piece plays, the replacement plays at the same exact amount of time and ends at the right time. They even allow some silence, with a few exceptions where they will insert music first to fill out silence, but only like once or twice an episode. And the fact is that there's still plenty of silence included, and the replacements aren't half bad, but fact of the matter is that at average, each episode leaves about 1/4 of the music. Now there is one exception, episode 14, the one where we meet Tia and Megumi. That episode actually kept 100% of the music, no questions asked. However, this is based on the entirety of Zatch Bell, or at least what was dubbed of it, and for the most part an average of 1/4 of the music. Although I will also point out this much because it's worth mentioning, any instance where a vocal song is being played by one of the characters, I'm not talking about just a random vocal song in the show, I'm talking about if the character is actually singing the song on screen, they tend to actually leave those bits intact because, well, I guess they want it to fit with what they're singing. And actually some of the dub ones are pretty good, including the one that Megumi sings in her debut, and Fulgori's songs, which I will say this much. His song Groping Boobies is of course changed, but I'm sure you figured that out because, well, they're not going to show that on kids' networks with a Y7 rating. But even so, it's a pretty decent song. Hey, hey, let's dance all day. By the way, if any of you ever find the voice actor who played Fulgori, feel free to ask him to try to sing an uncut version, just for fun. But anyways, not all the music and The rule is you have to keep at least 90% of the music, which they don't, so no. Number 3, free of sloppy or unnecessary edits. Alright, here's the deal. There are some edits, but let's face it. The original version had lots of sexual innuendos as well as other bits of violence occasionally. And of course, they're reducing this to a Y7 rating on Cartoon Network. So of course they had to make some edits. In fact, in the very first episode, Zatch was originally naked, but they gave him some underwear. And although I will admit that later on it looked a bit sloppy when he was shown with a pair of underwear on. And quite honestly, if it was up to me, I would have tried to, instead of putting underwear on him, I would have just tried to maybe have his hand covering himself and have it be one of those sort of things, because that's what most shows will do when there's a character that's naked. They'll just have a hand covering themselves or have the screen cropped up so that you don't see anything inappropriate, but whatever. They made their edits. It's understandable, and quite honestly, does anyone want to see a naked Zatch? I didn't think so. But anyways, they do actually keep in a few bits of violence, I'll give them that much. But nonetheless, they pretty much leave it alone. So, yes. Number 4, free of heavy Americanization. Well, to be honest, the setting is rather international. I mean, yeah, it starts off in Japan, but then it sort of travels around. They meet characters of all different backgrounds. And none of that is really denied as to where everyone's from, so I'll give them this one, yes. Number 5, uncut version available to the public in some way. Have you seen any uncut versions? I've seen a few edited DVDs, but those didn't last long. Nonetheless, no. Number 6, good voices. I'm gonna give them this one, and I know what you're thinking, but hey, they gave Fulgore an Italian accent. Well, of course they gave him an Italian accent. That's because, I don't know, he is Italian. Remember guys, this is my rule for voices. If the character is from a place and the accent is used to fit it, for example, an Italian character given an Italian accent, or something of that sort, I can reason with that, and I'm not going to take points off for that. As long as the accent isn't just completely out of place or uncalled for, I'm not going to be harsh about that. And in truth, most of the other voices as well are pretty good for the most part. The acting is decent, and none of them are wacky or outrageous, or at least not any more than they should be. So I'll give them this one, yes. Number 7, script handled well and free of obnoxious jokes added in, excessively bad translations, and otherwise unwanted rewrites. Yeah, for the most part, I mean, they do change a few bits if it's perverted, like characters saying that they're staring at some character's butt, or other crude innuendos. Those tend to be toned down or omitted in some way. But otherwise, they leave it pretty accurate. I mean, a bit of ad-libbing here and there, but nothing really changed that's an attempt to cover up the plot. So I'll give them this one. Yes. 8. All episodes dubbed, aired, and released to the public so far. No episodes skipped, merged, or otherwise missing. Keep in mind, they didn't really finish the series, but up until the point where they did get to the show, they kept all the episodes. Nothing was merged or skipped or banned for any reason. I mean, granted, it would be nice if they finished the series, but they're probably not gonna do that ever. But otherwise, I'll give them this one. Yes. 9, free of name changes? Not really. I mean, lots of names are shortened, like Kyo was originally Kiyomaru, and Zatch was originally Gash, but that was supposedly changed for other reasons, and several other name changes. And while I will admit that some of them are just LR alterations, which I don't take points off for, others are kind of weird, like changing Tio to Tia, go figure, and a few others that I can't remember off the back of my head. But nonetheless, they don't really keep the names, so no, sorry. 10 overall is a watchable. Yeah, it's a pretty fun show to watch, even with the edits it done. And in all truth, I will say this much. On the one hand, I'm kinda glad it was handled by Vid, but at the same time, I will admit that if it was handled by, say, 4Kids, aside from being butchered even worse than it was already. I will say that they probably would have actually been able to market the hell out of it and turn it into the next Yu-Gi-Oh! But luckily that didn't happen. And let's face it, how can it not be marketed that sort of way? I mean, let's face it, it's got a very similar plot to Pokemon, literally speaking. By the way, fun fact, the author of Zatch Bell, his last name is Raikou. I'm not making that up. But nonetheless, they could have easily made all sorts of things. Toys, a card game, you name it. Have a bunch of books sold that have the spells in there. They could have easily done that, but instead they just made it into their okay on-par dub, which was their second highest rated show on Cartoon Network, but they could have done much worse, and they mainly could have marketed it much more and hoarded it out, but they didn't, and I'm not complaining too much about that. But I'm rambling, aren't I? Anyways, the final score is 5 out of 10. Pretty much half. This, like I said, is how Viz handles their not-so-popular shows and non-big name titles. It's not their best work, but better than anything 4Kids gives, I'll give you that much. Oh well, see you next time.